Justice Secretary is with us now. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's just a horrifying set of allegations, and shocking that so many women who were there at different ages in their lives are coming forward with these experiences of really severe abuse at the hands of their employer. I think there are questions for all of the institutions that Mohamed Al Fayed was either in charge of or involved with about what they did, what they knew, and how they responded. I think apologies now are obviously very welcome, but I think there are some questions to answer about what's gone on in the past.
I've been looking at your article in the Sun newspaper that you've written today. You say in the article, you wrote the article, didn't you? Only on your first day in the job did you learn about the true scale of the crisis in our jails. What was your reaction when you heard?
I was horrified. We were just one bad day from disaster, and the situation that confronted me when I walked into the Ministry of Justice on the 5th of July was truly shocking and appalling. Our prison system was on the brink of collapse, and I had to take immediate emergency measures of the sort that no incoming Lord Chancellor, I think, would ever want to take in order to stabilise the crisis in our prisons and buy us some time to think of longer-term solutions. So what I've inherited is a very acute crisis. And make no mistake, our prison system was on the point of collapse. It's still under severe strain now. And if we had seen that happen, it would have been the breakdown of law and order in this country.
You say, I'll take you up on that in a second, you say our prisons could have run out of space at any time, which would have resulted in courts cancelling all trials and the police having to stop making arrests, which would have seen the total breakdown of law and order. Why do you say that?
Well, because if you run out prison places, that is the breakdown of law and order. You've got nowhere to put anybody coming in with a custodial sentence. If you run out of prison places, that means you either have to shut the front door into your prison system or open the back door out of your prison system. There's only those two options on the table if you run out of places. And we were very, very close to the edge. In August of this year, we were down to fewer than 100 places across the whole of the country in our prison estate. That situation is completely unacceptable.
But as the Justice Secretary, you know that the police's primary duty is to enforce the law, and they would have continued to do that.
Yes, but actually we know...
So they would have continued to make arrests.
We found out after the election, as it happens, that police chiefs themselves were writing to the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, saying he had to act on the prisons crisis because they were aware that actually, if we run out prison places, that has an impact across the whole of the criminal justice system and will impact on operational policing day to day. The previous government had a number of operational responses to the crisis in our prisons, and Operation Brink, the sort of worst end of the spectrum, would have effectively meant a one-in, one-out system in this country. The police were aware of that, and we now know, which we did not do before the election, that actually it was the police as well who were warning the government, the last Conservative government, that they had to act, and they did not.
As the Justice Secretary, you know that trials are a fundamental part of the legal process, and serious cases would have been prioritised with an increased use of bail, but the courts would have continued to operate.
Well, look, we know that partners across the criminal justice system were warning the last Conservative government that they had to act. The last Conservative government had a number of operational measures to slow down the increase in demand into our prison estate. Operation Safeguard, which is the use of police cells to hold people overnight. Operation Early Dawn, which is effectively a go slow in the magistrates' courts. And Operation Brinker, which would have been a one-in, one-out system. Yeah. All of our partners in the criminal justice system, across the whole of that system, acknowledge that the prison system was on the point of collapse, and that to avoid that was an imperative, and a failure to act would have led down to the breakdown of law and order.
To say a total breakdown of law and order is hyperbole.
No, I don't accept that at all. If the police can't make arrests...
It's happened several times in the past. And there hasn't been a complete
with respect, Kay, we have never got... with respect, Kay, I won't accept that. We have never got to the acute point of crisis that I inherited when I walked in to the Justice Department. We have never been in a position where there were fewer than 100 spaces across the whole of the country in our prison system. That is an abject failure of the last Conservative government. They knew they had to act in order to ease the crisis in our prisons. They failed to act, and it fell to me to pull those emergency measures.
Two previous occasions, or several previous occasions, early 90s, late 90s, 2007, 2008, when you had to implement this as a previous Labour government. The courts still worked then, and the police still arrested people then. It's total hyperbole to say it was a total breakdown of law and order.
I don't accept that, and it was the police and other partners in the criminal justice system who were warning the last Conservative government of the necessity for this action, and the previous government failed to act. So, with respect, officers and others on the front line disagree with what you're saying as well. Those are letters that we now know were written by the Met Police chiefs and other police chiefs across the country
to
the previous Conservative Prime Minister,
a letter
saying that he needed
from the
to
Met
act.
Commissioner to say that we were on the brink.
Well, I don't have that letter. That letter has been, other of your colleagues in the media.
Have
yes,
you seen it?
That is now a public letter.
Where the Metropolitan Police Chief has said that we were on the brink of total breakdown of law and order.
What they warn the last Conservative government is they have to act to avert a crisis in the prison system, because that is going to have a major impact on policing.
Including under a Labour watch.
I'm afraid I simply cannot accept the idea that what is going on now is similar to what has happened before. We're at a point of abject crisis in our prison system. We went down to fewer than 100 places, Kay, in August.
We've been over capacity before.
The last Conservative government deliberately ran the system boiling hot.
We've been over capacity before.
They ran the system boiling hot for months and months and months, and they knew that they had to take action in order to alleviate that crisis in our prisons, and they failed to take that action.
You've made a promise that this government will ensure the emergency release of offenders will never happen again. My promise to you is this government will ensure the emergency release of offenders never happens again. Prisons are expected to reach critical capacity again in July. What are you going to do then?
I'm going to take... I'll be announcing to the House later on today further operational measures in order to continue to ease the crisis. But emergency releases of the type that the previous Conservative government did with their early release scheme...
previous Labour government
hang on, let me finish my point. And also the mechanism that I had to pull in July, I'm ruling those out.
In the 90s and 2000s.
These schemes are different to what has gone before. I think to elide them all and behave as if each of the schemes that has been brought in, whether that's 20 years ago or now, are exactly the same in their form, in their shape, I think is wrong. These are different schemes. The last Conservative government's early release is very different to ours. I think I've taken some steps to make sure that the emergency release works operationally better than the previous government's. But yes, I do not ever want to be in a position where I or any successor of mine is having to pull this kind of emergency lever.
You talk about locking up the most serious criminals. That includes a 61-year-old man, Peter Lynch, with angina, who's previously suffered a heart attack and diabetes. He died in prison this week. He didn't have any previous convictions. He behaved appallingly during the summer riots, but he had no previous convictions. He was a poorly man. He's now died in prison. Is he the sort of person that is a serious enough criminal to be in jail?
Well, look, I don't take any death in custody lightly, and that will now be investigated, as every death in custody is, by the Prisons and Probation Ombudsman. Well, I think that actually I have to wait until that investigation is completed before I comment on the specifics of this case.
I'm asking you whether or not he was a serious enough criminal to find himself in jail.
Well, those are independent decisions to charge made by the Crown Prosecution Service.
You talk about locking up the most serious criminals. It's your phraseology.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I won't comment on the specifics of that case because sentencing decisions are a matter for the independent judiciary. What we are announcing is a sentencing review in order to make sure that we can deal not just with the capacity crisis that we have in our prisons, and to make sure that no emergency releases take place ever again, but also that we do better on rehabilitation, which is a huge problem in this country. 90% of people who are sentenced to a prison sentence are in fact reoffenders. It shows you the scale of the issues that we have and some of the things that we have to tackle if we're going to turn things around.
OK, are you satisfied with the ruling in the Chris Kaba case?
Well, I think the due process of law has taken its course. Clearly, it's been a very difficult trial for everybody who's been involved in it. The due process of law has now taken place. You wouldn't expect the Lord Chancellor to comment, I think, on the specifics of those cases. A verdict has been given. That must be respected by all sides. I'm sure everyone involved will want to take some time to process that verdict. And clearly, there is some work to do to build trust both with the police and also with communities as well, which I'm sure the Home Secretary will be saying more about in the coming days.
Back to what's going to happen today. In August, some were released who shouldn't have been. without informing their victims, so they would have had the opportunity to take protective measures. How can you be sure that this won't happen again?
Well, there was a very specific problem last time around where there was a very small number, 37 offenders who were sentenced against an older Act of Parliament.
A victim for every one of those.
No, if you let me finish the point, that was not a problem we could have foreseen because we anticipated everybody would have been charged and sentenced against the later Act of Parliament. That issue has now been rectified. That won't happen again. All 37 of those men were returned to custody and their victims are now being kept up to date. So that mistake won't be repeated.
One of those mistakenly released was understood to have allegedly reoffended and has been charged with intentionally touching a woman. He has subsequently been recalled to prison. Baroness Newlove, before this happened, did foresee that this would happen.
Well, on the specific issue relating to those 37 individuals, I think nobody, I could not have imagined that there would be people in our system charged and sentenced against an older Act of Parliament and not the newer law that had come in 2020. So I think that is actually a unique set of circumstances. The way I have pulled every lever at my disposal in this emergency release scheme to make sure that victims are notified. We deliberately acted quickly in order to give the probation service the time to prepare. That is a big break with the early release scheme that the last Conservative government had brought in, and I'm determined to make sure that the usual arrangements for victim notification work as they should. OK, it's good to see you, Justice Secretary. Thank you for taking the time and being so fulsome with your answers. Always appreciated. Thank you.